22 meeting summary. Is there comments or motion? Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, got it. Yes. Yeah. Oh, I thought so.
Oh, I
Glad you
have
remember.
a correction as
Yes.
well.
They were so sparse that I'm not going to disapprove of approving them. There's really nothing in them, and I did share my more detailed minutes with you all.
Yes, yes,
Hoping
thank
we can
you.
get more detailed minutes in the future.
Okay, yeah, that's actually come up before, and now we have these video timestamps. So the meeting minutes or notes really are sparse, but hopefully I've watched the meeting a couple of times myself. So is there a motion to approve or any more comments?
I have a comment, a hand up.
Oh, Eva, yes.
Yes, also, I was not at the last meeting, and by reading these minutes, I don't have a really good sense of what occurred at the last meeting. I believe that's the purpose of the summary. Also, it's incorrect because it says that I'm present at this meeting, December 19th. I was not.
I'm sorry, Eva, can you speak up?
She was Madam Chair, Eva just saying she was not at the meeting last time and it showed us as present. So we'll fix that on the summary. And just as a reminder, the meeting summary for the CAC, it's just a recap of what occurred. If you want to get the details, please refer to the virtual meeting online. The recording is always available. The reason for this is because they're long and the recording provides you more detail, but also the summaries we try to capture the action items is really what our focus is, as well as just summarizing what was discussed. So thanks for checking on that.
Yeah, I would like to mention that for the sake of transparency, it is not very accessible for people to watch the whole meetings because they are long. So I would like to request that the meeting summary have a little bit more detail.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so there's a motion and a second with two revisions there. Any other comments? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Submitted public comments for this meeting. Were there any?
No public comments were submitted.
Thank you. Okay, so the bulk of this meeting is really continuation of what we did last time, which is reviewing the projects. And then we also want to talk about those few projects that came up at the end with what's missing and what might be controversial. So we'll have another bigger discussion about that and hopefully come to some consensus about our list. So with that, I will hand it over to staff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And welcome everyone. Happy New Year. First meeting, CAC meeting of the year. So let's see how we do this year. So before I jump into some slides, I'm going to go through the slides. I'm going to ask you to just hold any questions because after I do the slide presentation, I've got Josh and Jeanette available. They're going to be on the portal and they're going to guide us in more detail through the refinement process, which is our goal today. So also I wanted to let you know that to please keep in mind that you can remove any projects from the overall list. We do have 10 additional projects. That's in addition to the 32 that you've been receiving in your packet. These are the projects that you described at your last meeting that were missing. So we're going to be reviewing those so that you can determine out of those 10 what you want to remove and keep. And then finally, I just want to thank you for last meeting's discussion went really great. It was very productive. And in order to continue to have a productive discussion at this meeting, since there are so many members still, we're going to call on members as they raise their hands. Carolyn and I are going to try and keep track in the room and remotely. But if I can ask, if you speak once, please let's give everybody else a turn before you speak again. So if you have a thought or a follow-up, please jot it down and we'll get back to you. We just want to ensure that everybody has their opportunity to speak at least once for each round. So thank you for in advance for your cooperation with us. All right, so with that, what we want to do today is focus on the fiscal constraint and maintaining the named project list to the $1.1 billion. That's the fiscal constraint that we have to keep in mind during this refinement process. Some questions that we came up with to determine which projects to remove as you go through the refinement process, and we'll remind you of these later on when we get to the portal. But we want you to think about, from a regional perspective, which projects, provide the least benefit to the transportation network. So keep that in mind as you're looking to what to remove and what to add. How are you going to maintain a good geographic distribution of the investments? We'll be showing you the maps again so that you can see how all of the projects play out, where the 10 additional ones are, where the 32 ones are. So again, keeping in mind what is a good geographic distribution of investments. And then which projects are not truly named projects and could be addressed under other RTA elements. I know we've had a lot of questions about why aren't these projects on there? Why were these removed? Please remember that this assignment was for only named projects, and the TMC and the CAC priorities only include the named projects. So anything else does not mean that they're going to be erased forever. That just means that they could be discussed later when we have the element categorical discussion. Those can be brought up then. And of course, the big question is, what will the voter support? That's always something to keep in mind as you're removing and adding projects. Next. I wasn't sure. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Sorry.
Just a point of clarification, $1.1 billion. Does that include covering the projects that are currently under RTA and that need to be carried over? How does that impact that dollar amount, such as First Avenue or other projects? Are they going to be charged against that $1.1 billion, or are they already accounted for under separate funding policy decision by the RTA board?
Good question.
my understanding is that the board will make that determination for today's, for your assignment is to come up with named projects that total up to 1.1 billion. And then if anything gets moved into, anything from the current gets moved up, then that'll be reevaluated. But for now, we're focusing on what named projects in the RTA next list should be selected. So some of the steps that we're going to go through today for the refinement processes, you should have all received the feedback that the TMC provided to you at their December 21st meeting. This is the feedback from your December 19th meeting where you talked about what was missing and some of the, kind of heartburn projects. Then we're going to review and finalize a list of the 42 projects. Again, the 42 includes the 32 that you received in your packet plus the 10 that you included at the last meeting that you were saying that they were missing. From there, you're going to then determine which projects to remove from the current draft list. Obviously, there's not enough funding for all of these. So the decision that the CAC needs to make today is, what to keep, keeping the fiscally constraint number in mind. And then, of course, the end result, hopefully, is to produce a refined draft list of named projects for the TMC. The TMC, by the way, is meeting this Wednesday. They're having an ad hoc working group. And at that time, only the jurisdiction members of the TMC and some CAC members will be attending to have that discussion and review the draft list. So just keeping that in mind. So I just wanted to show you the geographic distribution of all the 42 projects. Again, this includes the 32 that came out of those exercises, the priorities, and then the additional 10. This shows the whole layout of where the project list is right now. And out of that, there'll be some things removed. Next. This shows the 10 additional projects. This is the what's missing list that you suggested at the last meeting. So this just, shows you kind of the southeast and northwest projects that suggested needed to be added. Slide. And then the next couple slides are the 10 projects that you discussed at your last meeting. I'm going to quickly go over these, but again, Jeanette and Josh will facilitate the discussion of adding and removing. So out of the 10 additional projects that were suggested by you, there were 5 in the Southwest Vale area. Southeast Vale area. So the decision today of what to keep or remove will depend on, there are 2 Marianne Cleveland Way projects and 3 Colossal Cave projects. The number 3647, Marianne Cleveland from Houghton Road to Tucson City Limit was one of the ones that you had suggested. Number 476, the Marianne Cleveland Way from Vista del Lago to Colossal Cave Road. Number 395, Colossal Cave Road number 1, which is from I-10 to Marianne Cleveland Way. These would be the unincorporated segments only. And then number 3646, Colossal Cave Road from the Tucson City Limit to Don Drive. And then number 396, Colossal Cave Road number 2, which is from Marianne Cleveland Way to Camino Loma Alta. So these are the 5 that were suggested in the Southeast Vale area. So today you're going to be deciding what do you want to keep from this list and what do you want to remove. Next slide. And then one project was suggested as being added in the south area. So you'll just need to determine you want to keep it or remove it. And this is number 1494, which is the Houghton Road Andrada Polytech High School to Camino del Toro project. Next. And then there were 3 projects suggested to add in the northwest areas. And again, keep them or remove them. Number 2546 was the Thornydale Road, Cortero Road to Camino del Norte project. Number 1535, Ina Road number 3, which is I-10 to Camino de la Tierra. And then number 473, Ina Road, Cañada del Oro Wash to Paseo del Norte. Next. And then finally, there was one project suggested to complete the Drexel corridor, and that was number 472, Drexel Road, Cardinal Avenue to Mission Road. And again, decision today on whether to keep or remove it. Next. So once you go through that exercise, then you're going to go back and take a look at your initial 32 projects that resulted from that exercise you did and determine what do you want to keep and remove from there. And again, keeping in mind the 1.1 billion fiscal constraint.
Bucky, can I ask you, there was a couple of projects that were also discussed, maybe you're getting to that are considered too controversial for regional support. Is that are those taken out of this map that you're showing us?
These were taken out only for the purposes of they were too controversial. So today we're just focusing on the ones that you wanted to possibly add and still keeping up with the list of 32.
Well, I think those should be talked about too, because we didn't really have a full discussion of those. And that would be good to get a consensus on the ones that someone or someone's thought were too controversial.
Sure.
So I would throw that into the end of our discussion.
No, thanks for bringing that up, Madam Chair. When we dive into the discussion where we pull up the portal, that'll be an opportunity to be able to see some of those projects.
Okay.
So then we're now going to go ahead and begin the discussion on facilitating this refinement process. And I'm going to turn to our planning director, Jeanette Duran, and Josh will be assisting today to go through the portal and pull up the lists as you see them. And hopefully you have everything in your packet, but this is a time where if you need to review something, ask questions about the project, Josh and Jeanette will be able to maneuver through that, and we'll all chime in as needed.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, we're ready to get started. So just to reiterate what Pocky said, that $1.1 billion is the goal. So get to a list, that's the number that the RTA board tasked this group with filling that bucket. This list is the list of 42 projects. So this was the initial 32 plus the 10 that came out of last, 2 weeks ago, your last meeting. The total for this is 1.442 and change. You can see that at the bottom, like right in the middle under those columns. So we can look at these several different ways. We can look at as Pocky mentioned, the projects in the southeast, so your Marion, Cleveland, Colossal Cave projects, which are right here, and then the Houghton Road project. Another change that's on here versus the last time you've seen the portal is the cost change for the Sonoran corridor. In your meeting packet, there was a summary from the last meeting that it did talk about those projects that you mentioned, Carolyn. So we can have a discussion on those projects and see where everybody stands. But the cost estimate did change to the estimate that the TMC workshop came up with, which was 22 million, simply just for right-of-way acquisition. So that's why that total number there at the bottom is looking a little bit closer to that 1.1 billion. Carrie, do you have a preference on how we look at these? Or?
I guess I would first open it up. Thank you for any comments or clarifications on any of this. Yes, Abby.
I don't believe that we came up with a list of 10 projects at the last meeting. We never aggregated 10 projects, wrote 10 together, or voted on it. I'm looking at my very detailed notes of it, and certainly some people said, hey, I think we might have a problem here. We don't have a lot of projects. Hey, I think we might have a problem here. There have been conversations about projects there. But we didn't, and a few people gave examples of specific projects, like Marianne Cleveland Way came up. We never aggregated a list of 10. We never took action on it. I am very concerned that we're going forward as though we said that. And I'm also wondering what controversial projects got dumped, because as I noted last meeting, there were a couple of sidewalk projects that didn't get continued on without any conversation about it. And so I'd like more clarity on where this list came from. And if we are advancing lists of projects that we're adding or removing them, I would like those to be clear votes that we do.
Thank you. And yes, to clarify, that's what I'm hoping we can do today, because that is what happened at the last meeting. They were brought up, and now it's time to talk about them in a little more detail and see if we can find consensus. So,
Madam Chair and Abby, thanks for asking that, because we do want to start with the 10 projects first. We'd like to focus on those. And the reason that we have those 10 projects is based on the discussion at the last CAC meeting. The named projects were pulled from that discussion. And these are also the ones that the TMC reviewed at their last meeting on December 21st. So this is a list of named projects that could be possibly added. This doesn't mean that you all approved everything. This is just something that as a consensus, the group said, these are things we'd like to see in these areas. So the discussion today really stems on going through those 10 projects and looking at what do you want to keep? Do you still want projects in the Southeast area? Do you still want projects in the Northwest area? Do you want that corridor project? And then decide as a group, do you want to keep, remove? How many do you want to keep? Do you want to keep them all? Do you want to remove them all? This is where your discussion begins, but we'd like to start with those 10 named projects that came out of the last CAC meeting.
I just want to clarify, Pocky, you just said consensus, but there was no consensus on those projects. There was no vote on those projects. So discussion maybe, but not
Discussion, yeah,
Okay.
discussion
I want that to be clear.
based on, what we saw around the room, hands, and people nodding. It appeared that there were no objections to these projects being moved as possible additions.
Let's start with the
Chair, I just said it before we move too far from the Abby's other comments. The projects too controversial. They haven't been removed. They're still the two that were referenced was Sonoran Corridor as a is that worth it? Was a comment that was discussed, and then there was also the HCT. Was also referenced the 6th Avenue Onset Center to Tucson Airport. Those two were kind of flagged as controversial. They are still in this list of 42, so they haven't been removed. But to Pocky's point, I think the interest is looking at this list of 10 and kind of moving through that.
so, okay, go ahead. Yes.
Regarding the two controversial projects, I think it's pretty clear what's involved with the Sonora corridor, but the other project, there was a comment here regarding South Tucson's concerns on the busway project. I don't think we've had any real discussion, or I don't have any real discussion or understanding of what South Tucson's concerns are. Is there somebody who can give us a summary of what those concerns are?
Who brought that up last time?
Karen.
Karen?
Karen.
Is Karen on?
Yeah, she should.
Karen, are you there? Would you like to explain that comment?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. So my bringing that up was the topic was what projects potentially are too controversial for the voters. And having attended several meetings regarding the HCT down 6, the people in the room, the residents in the room, had a lot of concerns about gentrification and changing the nature of South Tucson, running the HCT down 6th Avenue. And this is available for public consumption as well. If anybody's interested, they can listen to I can provide links and to the South Tucson City Council meeting where many individuals potentially affected by this got up to speak, and there also was a newspaper article about it as well.
Thank you. Chris?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a clarification question. Are we saying that the Sonoran Corridor project is one of the 2 controversial projects?
Yes, those were the 2 that came up last meeting. And, I would add to Pocky, if people thought of other projects since then that they didn't think of and hate to make it more complicated, but add other projects into there too. We were hoping to focus on these 10 added. And then, yes, Sonoran Corridor was one of the projects that was brought up as potentially controversial. And my recollection is that was even with it only being right-of-way acquisition, it was still considered controversial.
Well, let's dig into that, because I guess my takeaway was it was brought up, but I would love to hear from members of the CIC, what's the controversy?
Correct. And that's what we're trying to do today, where things came up and now we want to discuss them and get more feedback. So thank you, Chris.
Right. That's why I'm asking. I want to zero in on Sonoran Corridor and why would people think it's controversial?
Thank you. Kevin.
Thank you, sorry. I was the one I think brought that up last time, and I said I didn't necessarily think the project was necessarily controversial. My point was, do we want to be fronting a project that honestly may not happen in a lot of our lifetimes? $22 million for right away, or whatever it was last week, or last month, it might have been like 50 million. Anyhow, my question was, do we want to be fronting that money now when it could be used towards a project that is, going to be constructed in the next, hopefully 20 years? I wouldn't say necessarily the project was controversial. That was more
timeline.
Yeah, timeline.
Thank you. Bruce.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to the Sonoran Corridor. I was involved in the early efforts to conceive of that project. And it really does have no impact, because although it may be pushed out 10, 15, 20 years when we complete the process, the idea of the Sonoran Corridor is to really provide an alternative methodology or method for traffic coming out of Mexico to get to the east without having to come into central Tucson and put additional burdens and impact on the existing interstate system. And in addition, it ties into the kind of development activities that are planned in Sahuarita, in the southeast area of Tucson. As I understand it, the notion of acquiring or using money to acquire right-of-way is that it will never be cheaper than at this moment to acquire that right-of-way, because as time goes by, those properties become more valuable and more difficult to acquire. And so it gives the basis for then taking the next step, which is to do the environmental impact studies and the planning and so on, that could then position us for state and federal funding. So I think there's merit in the notion of setting aside the $20 million. It's a relatively modest part of the total project cost. But I think it would be a wise investment at this point. I realize it's competing with other projects, but in the long-term scheme of how to relieve traffic and traffic movement through the region, the Sonoran Corridor will play a very significant role.
Thank you. Yes, Dale.
I think the only thing I'll add to that is we did something similar with the aviation project that's going on right now that we're talking about with the last proposal. And when you talk about long-term projects like this, and yes, they are long-term projects, you start planning and development starts happening in one thing or another. And there are situations that arise in that long-term planning and in the development of the community where right-of-way can be acquired, and in a unique situation where that right-of-way can be acquired now at a substantially less cost and avoid potentially having to tear down a building or a major structure that gets in the roadway because there was money available to the government to acquire that right-of-way. And I'll say that, we talked about it, long-term plan. We have completed the phase 1 study. And once the phase 2 study is completed, they'll have a pretty good idea what right-of-way they need. And so I have concerns about the overall cost of the package. I think as a practical matter, the 20 million is 20 million. That it will probably save us more in the long run than it'll cost, but only time will tell. That's true. So.
Thank you. Well, Chris has his hand up, but I'm wondering if there's anybody else that wants to jump in on this conversation before I go back to Chris. Okay, Chris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I will add to Dale's comment, and I'm hopeful that other members of the CAC chime in on this too. In the last state budget, money was included to do the phase 2. And so that this project is moving forward at a pace that, it's not fast by any stretch, but commitments of money are happening in order to identify sort of the specific route. And then the other thing that I will add is that this seems to me to be the very definition of a regional project that is squarely within the principles that I think we have been talking about as a CIC in order to maybe there is going to be truck traffic in terms of commercial truck traffic. This will benefit that, and it will benefit the region by removing all of that traffic from the downtown Tucson, at least part of it going east. And so that's why I was curious to see why it was labeled controversial, because in my mind, it's the opposite of controversial in terms of the tasks that we have here. It is by definition regional and will have benefits that go well beyond just putting that road in. So I guess those are my thoughts on that. I welcome anyone else's thoughts with regard to this project and its sort of nature. We have to make the decision, to Dale's point, now in order to put it in a position to be built, say, in 15 to 20 years. So that's my perspective on that. So thanks.
Okay, a couple of comments I have, and I guess I'd ask you, Chris or Bruce, when you said bringing federal or state money, does right-of-way acquisition go towards a local match? Do you know?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, and another comment, no judgment on Sonoran Corridor, actually 2 comments. One is, in circles that I run in, it is controversial. I don't know about that with the voters at large, but the other comment, and this is not saying Sonoran Corridor had anything to do with it, but I was also involved in the bond advisory committee for Pima County. And in the final hours, Sonoran Corridor and other transportation projects were added to the 2015 bond. The whole bond went down. The voters came back in 2019. same voters, Pima County and RTA. Just a transportation bond, much smaller, and Sonoran Corridor was in that, and that one went down too. But that could, like I said, I'm not making a judgment on that, but I do recall that, and tier 2 has been funded. I'm not sure if tier 2 has been started yet. Do you know? That hasn't?
I think they're right on the verge of doing that at this point.
Okay,
Yeah, my understanding is it has not been started.
okay.
Correct, they're in the starting activities. ADOT is the lead agency on that one. They've done the consultant solicitation. They're working on putting together scope and being expected, starting up the analysis activities in the upcoming months, probably in the next couple of sometime in spring.
Thank you. Okay, Arlen.
Thanks. Just a clarification question. The paper says 20 million. Somebody in the comments said 22 million. I just want to know if that number has changed. And also, tier 2 study doesn't mean much to me. What is the tier 2 study? Is that environmental, or is that something else?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, so a tier 1 was what was completed the first time. If you think about it, what that simply.
Turn on the mic.
Need a mic.
We need to get you a mic.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Number 1, Crystal.
Thank you.
All set? Okay. The tier 1 effort that had been previously conducted and led by ADOT on that is essentially to identify about a half-mile bandwidth corridor. So all it does is pick what area are we going to be going through. That can then allow it to move into a tier 2, which can identify any particular segment, or to tighten up into the 400 or 500 foot right-of-way segment. So the idea is now to move forward with the actual alignment, where it's going to lie within that half-mile bandwidth. And ADOT has the money provided by the legislature to look at the entire length of the corridor, going from basically I-19 to I-10. So they're going to be analyzing all 20 some odd miles of that. So we expect that to probably last 2 to 3 years as they go through that effort. But what the product will be as part of a tier 2 essentially will be then an identified alignment. The plans roughly to about a 15% level of design, give or take, and then what that right-of-way bandwidth would be. Arlen, does that answer your question?
Yeah, well, yeah, that question. I'm assuming since the chart says 20 million, no, that it's still 20 million, not 22.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I stand corrected. It is 20. That's the number that came from the TMC workshop.
Okay, and
that's for right-of-way acquisition.
And that's for right-of-way acquisition, but that's not based on the total right-of-way amount known. That was an investment level that was identified for advanced acquisitions as was described.
okay, so ADOT's paying for the tier 2 study.
Correct.
And 20 million would come from the RTA for right-of-way acquisition. And it seems to me that much of this property, not all of it, but much of this property is on trust land, state trust land, I believe, which probably isn't going anywhere unless this happens. Just, I guess, making that observation, is any additional money going into right-of-way acquisition from any other source, or is it would just be RTA?
At this point in time, in our discussions with ADOT and obviously with this group, no other additional funding sources or activities have been discussed that I'm aware of, or that ADOT has shared. So right now we only have that 14 million for the tier 2 and then 20 million proposed here for the advanced right of way.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, Ron, yes.
Is tier 2, does that include the environmental study, or has the environmental study been done?
That is, so the tier 1, you can think of it as a high clip environmental study. Tier 2 is detailed, looking more specific and allowing for that refinement. It's also got a lot more engineering activity associated with it because you're picking specifics, where the alignment's going to go, how wide, how big, how high. And all those detailed analysis points now are done at a much more granular level. So it's the environmental process through your NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act effort. And essentially what comes out of that then is your lockdown roadway alignment.
Thank you.
Right. To add to that, usually in environmental impact statements, it's all done in one fell swoop. But at some point, the feds decided on large, long corridor projects, they would break it up into a tier 1 and a tier 2. So altogether, both tiers are the whole environmental impact statement process under NEPA.
The big thing to add to that, because Carolyn's exactly correct, what really triggered the difference between a tier 1 and a tier 2 from a pragmatic standpoint, a tier 2 starts a clock. At the end of that, you have, I believe it's 3-year time frame to take the next subsequent action. Programming right away, beginning design for a future phase or segment. With a tier 1, it pretty much can last. A tier 2, you have that time frame. And then if that expires, you have to go back and do a reevaluation. So it's not to say the project goes back to square one, but you may have to update if new codes, policies, special species are identified, new methods of analysis are required, things like that.
Thank you, Rick. Eva.
Madam Chair, you mentioned that in the circles you run in, this is a controversial project. Could you expand on that?
Just that I know that there are groups that I don't know if there's any any lawsuits about it, but I know there's been concerns. My organization is not involved, but environmental organizations. And I guess I would add that when it was first brought up by the county, the Sonoran corridor was linked to an I-10 bypass. And they're, bifurcated. There are two projects that have their own justification in there. They each stand on their own, but it was much more controversial back then when it was kind of part of the whole bypass around Tucson, but that has changed over the last few years. So I'm not sure how controversial it is. To the voters, I don't know. I'm just saying that there are people that are opposed to it. Yes, Dale.
I'll just add briefly to that. I think there's a lot of confusion between the I-19 project and the Sonora Corridor project, and they're really separate projects,
Yep.
But they have been linked politically together at times. And then I think there's, in my mind, a lot more question about the I-19 issue than there is about the
Bypass, you mean.
Neil, are you talking about I-11?
I-11. I said I-19, I-11. My apology.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Go ahead. I will say that now I'm recalling that during the bond process, the opposition was definitely putting those two together. That's not in this proposal. So, yes, Abby.
I have nothing to say about the Sonoran corridor, but I'm wondering why we're using the word controversial. Women wearing pants and riding bikes was once controversial. I did both today. I think that we should be more honest about this and call projects bad or inappropriate or concerning. And with that note, I want to say I went back through our notes. At least 4 people used the term induced demand as a problem for road widenings last meeting. I see road widenings, road expansions, and new roads on here. I think that every one of those should be considered bad or problematic, not just controversial. We also had multiple people mention climate change. Again, road widenings, road expansions, new roads. I think every single one of those needs to be viewed as not necessarily something we need to axe, but something that has some serious concerns, and not just when it comes to how they're implemented, but actually even considering them in the first place. So I just want to be mindful of that. And then when we get to this part too, what will voters support? I said this last time, I still believe it. I believe that if we advance a plan that we believe in, and we understand how all the pieces come together, that we can explain to the voters why it's in their best interest. So I'm less concerned about finicky tendencies of the voters if we have a plan that we believe in. And I don't think we should try to get in voters' heads.
Yeah, well, I agree, Abby. Back to this issue, since we've talked about the Sonoran corridor, should we try to decide as a group if we want to ask it? And Kevin did make the clarification that it was about the timing of it and not controversial as the one that brought it up. which, that brings up a question of, are we trying to fix current problems or planning for growth? And I think there's some of both of that in this plan. But for now, I would ask the group if you think the Sonoran corridor should be removed from our list for right-of-way acquisition at $20 million. Does anybody want to make a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion.
Who is that, Eva?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll
Second.
second.
Who was that?
Patricia.
Okay, so a motion and a second to remove Sonoran corridor right-of-way acquisition from our list. Yes, Bruce?
So I understand the need to confront this question, but I don't think we should be answering this question until we've looked at these other projects in total and understand how they relate to one another, 10 projects that we're looking at, so we can make a thoughtful decision about whether Sonoran is more important than Marianne Cleveland or Elton Road or whatever. I just think making these discrete decisions without having the full discussion would be a mistake on the part of the.
Okay, thank you. I've got Joanne and Arlen. Joanne?
A motion to table the motion on the floor.
Second.
Second?
Second.
Second, Bruce? Okay. Thank you. Arlen?
I know a motion to table. Do I have the ability to speak?
No.
I didn't think so.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know. Okay. So we will vote first on the motion to table this discussion until later. And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
No,
No.
Nay.
No.
pardon me, I want to change my vote. That's a motion to table. I'm an aye.
Okay, I think I detected 3 no's. And who were they? Eva, Patricia,
Amanda, Parkman.
oh, and Abby.
In a minute.
And Debbie's a no also, please.
Debbie's a no also. Okay, 4. Can I see some hands for the others for 1, 2, 3, 4,
Wait.
5?
Tabling it?
Yes. I'm sorry. Okay, so we're not leaving it or taking it off. We're putting it off till later and we're going to try. I believe that was in the spirit of Bruce's comment about looking at all these. So perhaps we should go.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Yes, Joanne.
I would suggest that you ask for any abstentions on a vote.
Any abstentions? I abstain.
I abstain.
Who's that?
Yolanda.
Oh, hi, Yolanda. Why do I get the difficult things? That's what I wanted to have. No, they're all difficult. Yes. Okay, so this is what I propose. I mean, I understand what you're saying, Bruce, that we should then have a discussion on every single project, but not vote, and then see what we're coming up with any consensus. Is that what you're suggesting? The 10 projects plus the South Tucson project that we talked about being controversial.
Well, Madam Chair, 5 of these projects, I believe, relate to Marianne Cleveland in that area. So I think we could discuss those as a whole. And then we have the housing project and we have the transit project. So I think we're only having conversation about 4 projects. And then once we've done that, it seems to me we have the basis for saying we want to move forward. It'd also be important to understand what the dollar amounts for each are and how they relate to them. I'm not trying to keep us from making decisions.
That's a good idea.
They need to be tight.
Okay, then Jeanette, can we talk about the Marianne Cleveland and if they are being put together? Are they discrete or are they connected?
They are all connected, right? You can see them on the map, and then on the left, you can see the 5 projects that are
Okay.
comprising that discussion. So you have your Colossal Cave 1, Marianne Cleveland, Colossal Cave 2, Marianne Cleveland, and then Colossal Cave. So they all, you can look at them individually. So the thing to keep in mind about Colossal Cave is that there's segments that are in different jurisdictions. So for instance, this is a middle piece that's north of the interstate, but this is the segment that's in the city of Tucson. So it's kind of bookended by 2 pieces that are in the county. So that's definitely something you want to consider, is if you want to, probably don't want to leave a gap or just pick one. So you want to think about it collectively.
I'm sorry, could you turn on the other 2? Are they on one end in the south and the north end?
This is other piece that's in the county. Yep, this is Colossal Cave from Marianne Cleveland to Camino Loma Alta. Then Colossal Cave 1 is the interstate. It's the 2 pieces that you see here. So it's the county's project on both sides of the city. Yeah, but this chunk and this chunk are together, and then the city's project is its own project, and then the other project is Marianne Cleveland to Loma Alta.
And the total cost for, if you put the 3 Colossal Caves and the 2 Marianne Clevelands separately, but what are the total costs for each
Like
of them?
75,
Had about 96, 97 million, I think,
For those 2?
for all of the,
5.
all 5.
Discussion, Eva.
Yes, in the spirit of the comments about evaluating all of the projects together, would it be advisable for us to do a second vote and see where these projects land for our own information, based on the process that all of the rest of the projects have gone through?
I'm sorry, you mean to have a vote on-
Right. Well, we did a process with the database where we could see all of the statistics side by side, and then we got a ranking, right? Should we have these projects be reinserted into the database and then do a full ranking again to see where they land according to the criteria?
They already are. If you do, would you like to talk about the rankings for these particular projects?
Yeah, where are they in the ranking? If we already voted on them in the original ranking, I'd love to see where they landed.
Yeah,
So
we're pulling it up.
Yeah. So the CAC priority rank is this column right here, and then the scoring rank is over on this side. So none of these made it into that original 32, that original list of 32, but they were all in the list of 108. So when you went through that exercise of doing the priority ranking, they were in that bigger list.
And how did they rank against each other?
This project 395, the one that's highlighted, ranked the highest at 40, and then the other 2 were project 60 and 65 from this group's ranking.
Okay, so what we're seeing on screen is these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 projects in the ranking order, and the CAC score is right there.
Well, yeah.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to go back a little bit. This exercise, the ranking exercise and scoring has already been done. It's there in the database, and thank you for asking, Eva. But what we really want to focus on for the purposes of time and today's meeting is what needs to be removed. So from these 10 projects, starting with these first 5 with Colossal Cave, Marianne Cleveland, those in the southeast area that you discussed, what does this committee want to keep and what does this committee want to remove?
I would add that even if you recall, none of those that we're discussing made the cut of our rank, but we discussed regionalism and were there parts of town where there were no projects. So this exercise wasn't based on rankings as much as it was an open discussion last week about who thinks there's something missing. Bruce.
Sure. Could we do a thing for just for clarity? Could we organize these 10 based on CAC priority rank just to see what the order is based on that?
Okay. Bruce.
Yeah, I don't know yet how I will vote on each of these projects against one another, but I'd like to talk just for a minute to the merits of this project. I think one of the reasons they may have not scored as high as they were seen as just street projects rather than part as a response to a regional or sub-regional need within the metropolitan area. These projects are leading to one of the fastest growing parts of Pima County, and taken as a whole, they provide the primary access into the whole Vail, Rincon Valley, and Tanque Verde Valley area. The primary way to get into that area is off of Interstate 10, either at Houghton Road or Colossal Cave Road. Taken together, they represent the need and a response to the kind of growth that's happening there. I had previously suggested that we view them as an integrated corridor, and maybe they have to have phase development. Maybe not all the phases are taken under the RTA, but at some point in time, these issues this transportation requirement needs to be addressed. Secondly, by the nature of the fact that Rincon Valley, Vail, and Cronin and Tucson are not incorporated, they don't have the same kind of voice at the table. They were not represented at the CAC by a recognized jurisdiction. So nobody brought forward this notion of that as an integrated whole. So I would just ask the committee to consider looking at them as a whole, what the impact will be on future growth and development and providing transportation access to the area. Again, I'm not yet suggesting whether they have to be put above Sonora Corridor or any other project, but I do think they need to be viewed in terms of the regional impact and importance.
Thank you. Dale.
And I kind of follow on looking at these. We have 5 projects listed here. In my mind, they're really 3 projects, because Marianne Cleveland Way, there is basically, it goes from Houghton Road to where Marianne Cleveland ties into Colossal Cave. We have a segment that is in the city and we have a segment that's in the county. So there's 2 projects there. I suggest we review that as one. We have a segment of Colossal Cave that goes from Interstate 10 to Marianne Cleveland Way, which has 2 jurisdictions. So it's listed as 2 projects and really should be considered as one. And then we have a section of Colossal Cave that starts at Marianne Cleveland and goes to Camino Loma Alta. And, you know, I think we ought to look at it that way as those projects, because to build those 2 sections where there are 2 sections and leave out the other section is not going to make a whole lot of sense. And Bruce probably not going to like this comment. I think some of this, I can't see as approving all of it. I think there needs to be a project in the area, and I'm going to concentrate on 2 comments about it. Marianne Cleveland is really about getting people from Houghton Road to Vail. Colossal Cave, the segment from Interstate 10 to Marianne Cleveland, is also getting people from the freeway into the heart of Vail. And I think we need to prioritize one or the other and go with the projects. That's what I recommend. And I think it gets us something on the comment. I think there'll probably be plenty of public comment from that area once we put out that map. But I would suggest that, in my mind, the most important segment is Marianne Cleveland, but that's just my personal judgment. So That I've made comments.
Okay, thank you. And before I call on others, I just want the record to show that Chairman McGovern has arrived. And, and I don't know if you've been keeping up with the discussion in your travels, but we welcome you to pitch in and or take over. Facilitating. Arlen.
Arlen, you're muted.
Sorry about that. The last comment, I think was valid. I look at them as three separate things. The Marianne Cleveland to the intersection, Colossal Cave to the intersection, and then what's east of that intersection of the two roads. And I guess the one question I have is on the Colossal Cave section that crosses railroads. And regardless of what one does to the alignment or the road, unless we're bridging the railroad, there's going to be still a bottleneck there. Do the Colossal Cave projects from I-10 to Colossal Cave Road intersection, does that include some kind of bridging, or is that still an at-grade crossing?
At grade, I was told.
At grade, then it makes some logical sense, following the comments of the gentleman before me, and I don't know who it was because I couldn't see, is that yeah, if you're making a choice, then you're likely making a choice to Marianne Cleveland because it's a way of avoiding the railroad and augmenting that, even though you're not utilizing the freeway directly to get out to Vale. It is another alternative to avoid the railroad. So from that perspective, the Marianne Cleveland part, and for only that perspective, make more sense if you're going to choose between them. The question then is the section of Colossal Cave Road east of the intersection that serves the greater Rincon Valley, is that as regional part of the network as the other two? And that's a debatable discussion. It is obviously for the people that live in the Rincon Valley. It is less so for the people that don't and utilize the one or two others to get to Vale, either for the shopping or to get to the golf course or whatever it happens to be.
Okay, I've got Joanne, Jamie, Tom, and then Rachel.
You can dump me some, excuse me, somebody already took my thunder.
Okay, thank you. Jamie.
Yeah, so just for clarification, I'm looking at the project description for Fossil Cave Segment 1, and it does say construct 1 or 2 bridges over the Union Pacific Railroad tracks. So it is not at grade. And if, you know, if there's any doubt on the committee, you can click in there, right? So, because making a 4-lane road at grade would be silly. So there is a plan for a bridge. As a person living in the area, congestion is horrible in Colossal Cave. Marianne Cleveland has its moments, but to say, well, let's just drive 6 miles out of our way is not always genuine, right? And it's not just people heading into Tucson, it's heading eastbound as well. So I think, I don't know why we have to choose one or the other, to be honest, because the need exists for both based upon the traffic patterns and statistics. So in my opinion, I mean, both need to be in. If we had to choose one or the other, Colossal Cave is clearly a higher need, given the school zones. If we want to look at safety, that section goes through 2 elementary schools. And it's a huge problem. I mean, the people that I run in circles with, I guess is the term we're using, our area, that's probably their biggest frustration, that area. Furthermore, just at the interstate, looking at social media this weekend, everybody is very upset with the traffic on the intersection of Colossal Cave and I-10. And in my prior life as a fire chief, we ran a lot of accidents there. So there's a lot of issues there that we need to fix. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Tom?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's cumbersome for us to try to add and remove projects and make decisions about which ones we should or shouldn't put in at this, very basic level of individual projects. I think a better way, at least in my way of thinking, is to add whatever projects the group thinks are needed and not worry about what the cost of all those projects is yet. Get to a total project listing that we know is going to be too much, and then make a decision at that point about which ones to remove. We would get at Bruce's comment about a holistic view of the overall plan by doing that, because we would have the whole region covered, if you will, by whatever projects at this time we think are needed. And then at that point, as we start to remove projects to get us to our budget level, we could just immediately see what sort of impact that might have on that holistic view of the plan. So, my feeling here is that we should just, assuming that there's a fair consensus, we should add those 5 projects to the list and move to the next question. And frankly, going back to the Sonoran Corridor, I think we should add that, given the amount of I'm assuming the amount of support that exists for that project here in the CAC. And then when we get finished with that process of adding, go about the difficulty of removing.
I guess I would say, Mr. Chair, that I think that was kind of what we're trying to do, because there wasn't really a consensus last time. So we're trying to get to that consensus. But of course, that means that we start talking about individual projects. So out of these 10, and I'm wondering if you are you suggesting that we just add them now and not take any out, which was actually from the TMC was one of their questions. If you're going to be adding these, can you take some other ones out? So what would you suggest we do take to the TMC on Wednesday?
Well, I suggest that we look at the projects as we are, discuss them, and if there is apparent consensus for them, add them to the list. And before we send anything to this to the TMC, I think we should talk about, with that master list, that huge list, what do we want to put in reserve? What would we pull off? I think there's also the possibility, as we've discussed previously, that the board may ask us for additional projects should they elect to go to higher than a half-cent sales tax. And certainly we'll have quite a list here as a result of this process to get to 1.1 billion. And I think that list then becomes kind of a secondary list. We may also, however, as we create this, what I'm calling master list, with too much cost, we may find some of those projects that we think actually should just be removed, period. That aren't needed, maybe are superfluous, maybe are conflicting, maybe are controversial, who knows? But it seems to me that seeing what the whole thing looks like would help us immensely in making the decisions about what to remove.
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, if I may, I do want to clarify that the goal for today was, once you review the 10 and add them to the 32, the ones that you choose, we do really want to end the meeting with removing projects to go to the TMC on Wednesday, if possible.
Yeah, and it very well may be that when we get to the end, we can't remove all of them. The end of today's meeting, we can't remove enough to get to 1.1 billion. I'm okay with that. In fact, some of those things we may need further input from the jurisdictions about either how to break down the Mary Ann Cleveland Colossal Cave 5-pack, exactly what everyone else in the jurisdictional world thinks about Sonoran Corridor right-of-way. You know, there are a number of these projects that we may want to ask more pointed questions than we did previously of them, and try to get more feedback as far as some of these projects go. But yeah, I understand that's our goal, and I just want everyone to understand that we need to make decisions based on the best information we have, and if there's additional information we can gather quickly, like within 48 hours, then by all means, let's do that.
I think he's saying you can wish all you want, staff. We might not get there. But and I will remind everybody, this is an iterative process with TMC too. So I think that, you know, however we approach it, I think we're going to need more information. Rachel. You're on mute if you're trying to talk.
Yes, I'm sorry. It took me a second. I just wanted to note that I'm here for attendance purposes because I was late. Because, you know, this is in the middle of the workday. I also want to mention that I'm not in favor of this entire process that we're using for this, because let me just give you an example. Jamie mentioned congestion out on Colossal Cave Road, that area. We know it's been well studied that widening roads doesn't decrease congestion. In fact, it increases congestion in the long run. So but because we've been forced into this framework of, you know, talking about these projects based on the categories that were forced down our throats of roadways, transit, etc. And Mr. Chair, you have not allowed us to even discuss the categories. We are being forced into this situation of just voting up or down on the projects as opposed to reconceiving them or letting the jurisdictions reconceive them in an alternative framework altogether. Perhaps the way to manage congestion would be to increase public transportation options, etc. But we are not allowed to talk about that because we can't get those things on our agenda. Thank you. That's what I wanted to say.
You and Arlen.
Thanks. Thanks for the clarification on the bridging, because Colossal K Road is a problem, at least to the intersection, and such. There will be challenges to that because that passes through a historic area, so it's that will be an expensive proposition. I'm just going to put it that way. Probably more expensive than dealing with Mary Ann Cleveland, but it will say it is an issue. I still think that the part, if we were to bifurcate this, the part that is east of the intersection is not uncritical, but less critical from a regional perspective than the other two, which makes a loop. Thanks.
Thank you. Tom, would you like to, could I hand the gavel back to you
Sure.
if you're ready? Thank you.
Yeah.
We don't have anybody, by the way.
Okay. So in keeping with what I mentioned about a path forward for us on these projects, let me ask if anyone would like to suggest a addition to our master list of any or all of these 5 projects.
Of additional projects on top of these?
No, these 5 Marianne, Cleveland, Colossal Cave projects that we've been talking about. Does anyone want to add those to our list of projects? I have a motion from Bruce. What is the motion?
I move that we consider the 5 projects in the Vale area, Marianne, Cleveland, and Fossil Cave roads to our list of projects for consideration as we move forward and present those to the TNC for comment and review.
I second that.
That was Mary?
Yep.
Yep, that was me.
Very good. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Nay.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay.
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 Nay. Okay, the ayes have it. We'll add that to our list of master list of projects. Remembering again that we may remove any or all of these projects when we get to that full master list.
Mr. Chair, this is Yolanda, and I was having trouble with my microphone. And I just want to go on the record that I voted nay.
Okay, thank you, Yolanda. Dale.
I'd like to make a comment about reducing congestion and building reasonable roadways in an area that is having explosive growth. There is not much question, and I think the research on widening roads has always been an issue. But a lot of the decisions in some of these areas, because of the lack of limiting development, have already created issues that will cause, widening. We're not talking about an issue of going from 5 lanes to 6 lanes or 7 lanes. We're talking about an issue of going from a approximately 35 to 40 foot roadway that's strip paved and has no underbase, has very little substantive roadway, that's going to be problematic and have to be rebuilt in some way at some time. And the development is already there. So do we obviously, I think we need to keep in mind that in some of these projects that are in the outlying areas, that you have development issues that have to be considered. And that, yes, I don't quarrel with the fact that widening roadways on, say, Broadway or some of the other roadways may create more traffic and that there are other alternatives. The reality, though, of what you're dealing with out there is different. And that's not to say that your argument isn't valid and doesn't have some real substance in the future development of the areas, but there are minimum levels that need to be achieved to make roadways. So I just want to put that statement out there.
Thank you, Dale. I will go back to Rachel's question about induced demand. We at our last meeting, we talked about, or I think perhaps it was even Moss that may have brought it up regarding Caltrans induced demand model. And we do have an expert in PAG with regard to that. And at our next meeting, we've arranged to have him provide some feedback to us about that and allow for at least a short discussion about it, so that we can all wrap our heads around kind of what the current science, if you will, about induced demand is. Okay.
We have three people, and Rachel, your hand is up again. Were you going to respond to that point or bring up another one?
Yes, I just wanted to say that there was a very thorough article about road widening and traffic congestion and induced demand this weekend in the New York Times, and I would request that we have a way to share that with the other members of the committee. I don't currently have a way to do that because if I email everyone, I'm told that's an open meeting law violation, but this is a relevant article that just came out that I would request be shared with the group.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Yeah. Send that to Pocky and we'll get it out to the committee for information.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Mel and Mary on.
Okay. Mel.
Further to that idea, I'd like to understand what plans there are for transit in the Vale area. A lot of the workforce is going to may live there, but they're going to go somewhere. And I would like to understand how in our planning we're incorporating transit ideas, public transit.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Mel, for the purposes of today's meeting, we're only focusing on the named projects. I know you mentioned transit last time as well. The transit working group or subcommittee will be meeting once we get to speaking about the other elements, which includes transit. So for today, we just really want to focus on the named corridor projects in that area.
Well, my point was to make sure that for those areas that we're planning, that there will be some concept of transit at least looked at for those named areas, including the Vale areas.
Yeah, I know. Thank you.
I don't know if anyone has information currently about what the current situation is, except that I would assume that either the dial-a-ride or the Sunvan alternative options for disabled patrons is available there. As far as any other bus routes or anything, Chris, do you know?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the only transit right now is an express route that picks up in the morning and the evening just to the east of the Science and Tech Park. So that's the only organized transit that provides employment during the course of the day.
Okay.
I don't know what plans SunTrans or the county have for extending transit into that area. I know that's one of the issues under discussion as part of the Vale Corporation discussion.
Yep.
Well, I would suggest that we do schedule a transit subcommittee meeting and start. There's our next one. It's looking kind of full. I think we have a lot of things we need to talk about. We might as well get going. So I would suggest we start looking at a time for that.
Good. What else do we have?
Mary, I'm sorry. I butted in front of you, Mary.
No problem. I always make way. I would like to also recommend, I don't know if it's a motion, but recommend that little piece of Drexel Road is just one piece of a greater expanse, all of which were higher on our list. And this little piece is the only thing left. And it would be really silly to do all the parts around it and not do this part.
Yeah, we will get to that as our fourth bullet on this feedback list that we have. Thanks. Abby?
I'd like to bounce off what Mel said and the information that Bruce gave us, which is that we can't consider roadway projects until we're considering transit. Because until we know that we have a plan for like great express bus routes, we don't know how many more roadways or wider roadways or new bridges we really need. And I can say, I'm going to make the circles that I run in reference to. I take the bus downtown to work on days that I don't bike. And tons of people come in from express bus routes from farther afield. So it is possible to live further away and still have a reduced traffic impact. Being on the bus reduces your impact on the road. It's not just that it reduces emissions. It's not just that it reduces your chance of dying in a fiery crash or killing a pedestrian on your way into work. It's a wonderful alternative. And those are nice buses. I'm a little bit jealous as an interurban bus user that I don't have a snazzy express bus. But I really don't want us to be approving. We can talk about the roadway projects. I don't want us to be approving talking about keeping them on until we see how they fit with the transit projects. And I strongly encourage all of our folks who live further afield and can access one of these express routes to try it because they're really fabulous. So I feel like we're only looking at a very small part of the picture when we talk about road projects without talking about transit. And I'm on the transit subcommittee. I think we met once. So I would ask that we start having more active meetings where we look at this as well. Obviously, not every route is going to be the best route for transit. And I hear what you're saying, Dale. We need some basic road improvements and some basic maintenance. I'm also concerned about that because we've discussed that maintenance isn't part of our funding. So there's a lot of different pieces here. I think they all have to work together. So I feel pretty blind having a conversation about any of these. I'm happy to hear from people who live in that area about what the reality is on the ground and what you think you need. But I think we all need to be a little bit more open-minded to how we can have a more creative, integrated transportation system going forward for the next 20 years.
Right on.
So I want us to keep thinking about that.
Well put. A reminder to everyone that we're developing a plan, not just a list of roadway projects. However, the path that we're on is to begin with a list. Admittedly, it'll be a list that's too large, and it'll also be a list that once we have the other elements defined and including transit and maintenance for that matter, we'll be able to refine that list then, both to examine some of the things that Abby talks about here, as well as to put kind of tests, if you will, on the entire plan, such as coverage of areas of the community, some of our other guidelines and goals. All those are things which we rightly can only finally make conclusions about once we have an entire plan. But for now, we do have a tabled motion regarding the right-of-way for Sonoran Corridor, and based on.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chair. What we're hoping to do is get through the list of the 10 and have that continued discussion on the named corridor projects. So if the committee could review the projects in the south area and then the northwest area and then the Drexel corridor and make a decision on whether to add those to the 32 or not, then you can.
So Sonoran Corridor is already on the list. Is that what you're telling me?
The agreement was for the committee to add it back on, I believe. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks. All right. So the next one that we have is in the southeast area as well. This is Houghton Road, number 1494.
I'm sorry, who brought that one up last time? Didn't come up at our meeting?
Mr. Chair, this is one of the projects that was discussed also with the CAC and that the TMC also agreed to review. This is the Houghton Road, Andrada Polytech High School to Camino del Toro project that the CAC was saying could possibly be missing from this list.
Right.
Somebody did anyway.
Someone did. Anybody want to champion that project?
And are we able to pull that up to show?
That's it there, isn't it?
It's
Yeah,
there.
okay, just want to make sure.
Yep.
There, oh, there. it is.
All right, so on your screen, you can see this project. And I can't read that. Maybe someone who can
I think
read
it
it.
was brought up with respect to drainage issues, that portion of the region. In the project description reads, reconstruct roadway, 4 lanes divided with drainage, bridge, intersection improvements, paved shoulder, sidewalks, landscaping, ITS, transit, public art. And the project scope may change based on future traffic and technology at the time of implementation and effectiveness of transportation demand management, ability on demand, and other strategies.
All right. Do I hear anyone wanting to be heard about this specific project?
I shouldn't, but I will. You know, this is one of those projects that has really long-term issues. As a number of people out there who have drainage issues, that roadway, the northern end of this Houghton Road has been substantially improved. Is in the process of being finished at the moment. But the southern end of it on down to what I always say called New Tucson. It's had about 6 different names over the years. And there is definitely drainage issues on the roadway. Ultimate solution, and it's a part of the bigger loop of Sarita and Houghton, et cetera, tying in. I'll be very honest, I really have a hard time moving it forward at this time. But as a practical matter, it is a part of the regional system that has been envisioned since the get-go. And it does have serious drainage problems. I'm not sure it's really has the volume problems that justify 4 lanes. But
Hey Dale, let's ask Jeanette if she can show us the ranking and the scoring.
Thank you.
That project.
Sure. This ranked 14th. I apologize. It ranked 65 and the score was 14th, and it's the sponsors number 12 ranked project. And I turned the
Sponsors Pima County, right?
That's correct. And I turned this map on too, so you can kind of see what Dale's talking about, the New Tucson, Corona de Tucson area down here to the south. And then connecting to this piece that would go all the way upstairs.
And I'll say, I'll make a motion that we include it and let people vote how much farther we should go. You can see the rankings, and I think we just need to make a decision one way or the other.
Second. No, I'm asking for a second.
Yeah, is there a second?
Jamie will second.
Was that you, Jamie?
Yep.
Okay, and I do have 3 people on deck here, Jamie, Arlen, and Joanne.
Jamie?
So I'll make a case for it this, but somebody always told me if the vote's yes, you shut up. So, but just so people understand, because I live in this area, Houghton is a mess. I mean, there's a lot of traffic. We've had a number of high profile student deaths on that road. And there's a huge population down there that's been underserved. I mean, people can argue and have sprawl, but the county's been approving high density lots down there. So, be able to serve this area, we need to get there. Again, like I said, when it rains, that becomes an island. And with people with medical issues cannot get the help they need. They can't be transported to the hospital. There is no transit in that area. Mass transit, I'm sure there's the dial ride for this disabled and disadvantaged, but I think this is a project that's needed.
We've got, I want a clarification to staff. What are the roads? I know you just have the high school. I'm kind of unclear exactly what the closest side crossroads are.
Sarita Road is right here,
Okay,
and then the interstate is up here at the top,
And
the
where-
fairgrounds right there,
Where's the high school?
High school is right there at the northern end.
right there.
and it is paved now. Okay,
Just a little additional factual information. There are about 9,000 people within that census designated area, which includes Corona, Tucson, New Tucson, and the Santa Rita foothills. And the Santa Rita foothills has been experiencing quite a bit of growth. There are those big blocks of development down there. And it is, that roadway is interrupted during the rainy season when people cannot travel on it during the monsoon rain. So it does pose a significant problem to a fairly large cluster of people.
we've got Jamie. No, we got Arlen and Joanne.
Arlen?
Thank you. This is one of those cases where, you know, a lot of this development has been there since it started since the early 1960s and has grown on and off over a period of time. There's a master plan community that's planned in that area that will Diamond Ventures project that will eventually utilize, at least in part, Houghton. But the issue to me on this project, this is one of those where it's all or nothing. This is a road widening, but it's also dealing with maintenance and drainage. The major issues out here at the moment are safety, drainage, road condition, that sort of thing, less the widening. And if we look at it as a widening only at those major intersection points, we could buy some time, not have to do the whole thing, but we do need to address safety, flood control on this project. So when we say we put it in or we take it out, I'm struggling because I would put in a portion of this project. I would not necessarily widen it to 4 lanes. Ultimately, it is a dead end, and there are other alternatives to get from Sahuarita to the freeway and north. Granted, they don't go by the high school. Wentworth Road, Wilmot Road now goes through, other roads go through, but so there are some, Old Spanish Trail goes through. So there are other alternatives as well, but safety and drainage are paramount for the relative to this section of the road.
Thank you. Jeanette, could you remind me, I thought I heard you say that the sponsoring jurisdiction ranked at 14th, but what I see there is the CAC ranked at 14th. Did it turn out they were both the same, or?
The jurisdiction rank is 12. 12.
Well, okay.
That's over there.
So Pima County had somewhere around 22 projects or something like that. And it was kind of in the middle of their list then, from what I'm remembering. It's more like 28. I've forgotten now. 21. Okay. Yeah. So, all right. So there's that information. Do we have
Yes.
one more?
Well, 2 more. Now we have Joanne and then Eva.
Joanne.
First of all, I'd like to say that I hope everything went well at your appointment, Tom.
Thank you.
Yes,
Everything
that's
is,
me
going
sucking
well.
up for those who don't know. And number 2 is Arlen mentioned or touched upon what I wanted some information on is regarding the expected expansion of residents in the community in that area, and how are we taking that into consideration when we're prioritizing the project, the Houghton Road project?
It's a very big question right there. If we build it, will they come? If we wait for them to come, will we be able to afford to build it? Will we want to build it? All those are to this level probably unanswerable, but good ones to keep in mind for us all.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Eva
Thank you.
and then Kevin.
Yeah, we have Eva and then Kevin.
Yes, thank you. I wondered if someone could refresh my memory on the RTA on drainage and flooding management. I remember at some point some conversation about that not being something that RTA is supposed to fund. I don't know if I'm misremembering that. And then also, what's the name of the high school that's being affected by this project?
It's Andrada Polytechnic High School, I think.
Yeah.
And as far as drainage goes, new projects throughout the region address drainage as an integral part of those widening projects, if you will, or modernization projects even.
So that's new,
All
but
right.
going back and ameliorating drainage situations. What's the view on that?
Well, all weather access is considered a transportation issue. So if a roadway is being improved simply for drainage, it's likely that it's going to be for development of all-weather access for emergency vehicles and convenience of transit or transportation.
Kevin, I think is up next.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Eva, did that
Oh.
answer the question?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Kevin.
Yeah, just a quick question. I think we have like congestion information available. Do you know what like traffic volumes are now and in the future?
We're pulling that up.
So it's showing up as having that congestion in that future build scenario of 2045. So it does show up where we're expecting, because there's adopted subdivision plats, expecting residents to be out there. So there's some congestion projected to be along the corridor.
So I guess what I was getting at is going to the 2-lane or 4-lane question, and it sounds like we shouldn't take the 4-lane off the table. Isn't the Southeast Logistics Center down here as well?
It's just north of it.
Okay.
That's
I think it tended to be a large employment center, so. I assume that's taken into account in the future.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, correct. That would be where jobs are projected to occur, and so where housing and residential units are expected to continue to grow, or new growth that is expressed. So
okay,
check that volume label. This will show you the I'm sorry, there's that selection is kind of making the visual hard to see along the actual facility project. But if you turn it,
And the volumes that show there, Josh, are 2045. Those are current.
yeah, the
More
blue
or less
ones are
current,
they're 2019, and then the future volume of 2045 is the one adjacent to it. So,
yeah.
all right. I mean, I think that answers my question. I don't think we should necessarily take the 4-lane off the table.
All right.
Chuck is up.
We have Chuck and then Ron. So Chuck, may be muted, Chuck.
Now he's muted.
That's a microphone issue. There we go. Now we don't have. All right, Chuck, just butt in whenever you're able to get yourself unmuted. And we'll go to Ron right now.
Yeah, point of clarification. My understanding from the beginning was it wasn't the committee's obligation to change the scope of projects, but to accept them as they are. Do we have the authorization to modify the scope that the entities have asked for as part of this exercise?
Yeah, I think the simple answer is yes, but I believe anytime we feel that that should be done, we should go back to that jurisdiction and get feedback about it. Certainly we'll be making the decision the best we can with the information we have here, but in most cases we won't have their feedback. And I think, you know, to make proper decisions, it's probably a good idea to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Dale, did you?
I was going to make a comment about the flooding issue and my understanding and staff, and I'd like to know if the staff thinks I'm wrong here, is that on the flooding issue, the basic thing is something that impacts the roadway, and the flooding of the roadway is dealt with in the construction of the RTA, but providing larger drainage systems are not something that the RTA would fund. And
like a flood control.
Right, yeah. And I wanted to use a specific project that's constructed already by the RTA, and that is the Grant Road project. There was a serious flooding problem at just east of Euclid on Grant Road, and there was included in the RTA project was removal of a series of houses along the south side of the roadway, and the input and the construction of a retention basin to put the water in the retention basin and let meter out. They didn't go ahead and solve the city's bigger problem of not having major drainage in that area, but they did solve the problem on the roadway.
That's
And I
perfectly,
think that's an example.
that's perfectly stated, and that's correct. You need the transportation nexus, or basically that interface between the drainage aspect of it and the roadway to then trigger what those improvements, to Tom's point, to achieve that all-weather crossing.
And as we've heard from ADOT, many of these projects, if not nearly all of them, will also have alternative funding sources. Often when there's a major nexus with a flood control issue, the flood control district of Pima County may provide additional funds to add on to that project in order to boost that scope.
Well, and just one other quick comment was on the current Houghton Road project on the north end that the Pima County has built, there is a significant retention basin on the west side of the roadway as it's been built. So as a part of building the roadway. So.
Yep. Coordination with all agencies and utilities is a standard part of these projects as well.
We try Chuck again. Chuck?
Yes, I think I maybe have solved my problem.
Yep, we hear you loud and clear, although you could
Good to hear.
speak up just a tad.
Yes, I would only want to make an observation based on Arlen's comment. That is that this really effectively is a one-way road. It's a dead end on the south end. So I'm sure it's from a collector standpoint, it's going to benefit a lot of people along the way, but it's not really going to ever be a thoroughfare. And the other observation I make is looking at the price tag of this project, which may not be part of our discussion right now, but we're talking about 57 million. So in terms of prioritizing how money's going to go, why that might not necessarily fit into the plan.
Okay. All right. Thank you for those comments. We have a motion and a second on the table to add this Houghton Road project number 1494. All those in favor say aye.
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 Right. And nays. How many nays do we have?
Nay.
They,
Nay.
Can we do a count?
Yes, we should count.
Yeah, I do need to count those. Sorry. I was anticipating it not to have that many ayes. All right. So let's just ask for the ayes in this room. Raise your hands if you're an aye.
Mr. Chair, this is Chris. Can you restate the motion, please?
Yeah, the motion is to add project 1494 Houghton Road to our master list of named projects. All right, so there are 4 ayes
I think it was
in
5 in the room.
5. Sorry, 5 in the room, and can we kind of do a roll call there, or just ask people to?
Please raise your hand remotely for the ayes.
Mr. Chair, raising of hand is not, we can't see it. I think we need to do a roll call with regard to the votes.
To your point, I think going forward, when we're going to do these votes, that we should do every one of them by roll call. I think we should have a list of the committee members, because we're coming back at the end of the next meeting. People say, it's very confusing, and it's going to need to do a roster and be able to take roll and then we know exactly what's happening.
Okay, yeah, that's a great suggestion. All right, the ayes in the room are Kevin, Ramon, no, sorry, Ron, Dale, Tom, and Bruce. And the nays then are Carolyn, Abby, and Ramon. All right. Pocky, could you help us the roll call of those on the?
Sure. So roll call for the ayes on remote. We have,
Are you still asking them to raise their hands?
yeah, please raise your hands. I see Michael Edmonds, Jamie Cayley.
Anybody else?
Anyone else with an aye vote? Okay, so the nays, okay, remove your hand, and then the nays, please raise your hands.
I don't know how to raise my hand, but this is no, and I'm going to have to leave the meeting. Thank you. This is Yolanda.
Okay, Yolanda. Okay, we've got Eva, Arlen, and Amanda.
Mr. Chair, point of order,
Yes, Joanne.
call for quorum.
Did we just lose quorum? No, we did not lose quorum. Quorum is 16 now.
Thank you.
We have Joanne, Amanda, Chuck, Diane, Chris, Patricia, Mary, Mel, Bernays,
Very good.
and Eva.
And Arlen.
And Arlen.
Yep.
So,
Joanne would like us to have an ask for abstention.
oh yeah, good point. Are there any abstentions? Simply say your name. Hearing none, the nays have it. The motion fails, and Houghton Road at this time will not be brought forward to our master list.
Mr. Chair, the next item on the list are the 3 projects in the Northwest area. And those are number 2546 Thornydale Road, Cortero Road to Camino del Norte, 1535 Ina Road number 3 from I-10 to Camino de la Tierra, and then number 473 Ina Road, Piñata del Oro Wash to Paseo del Norte.
Dale, were you the one that brought these ones up?
I'm sorry, right?
Were these ones you brought up?
Yeah, these were, well, actually, I brought up Ina and Orange Grove, but I can see, I don't want to even talk about Orange Grove at this point. So I did not bring up Thornydale. I think somebody else did, but
I believe Arlen brought up Thornydale and in his conversation earlier.
That's correct.
Arlen, would you like to champion this?
Sure. For going back to most of my days in the county, the traffic and congestion on Thornydale Road has been an issue. The development of Oro Valley, Marana, unincorporated Pima County, but mostly the two jurisdictions, has just added to that, and it remains a major issue. I don't have the traffic counts in front of me. I can't see them here or the future traffic counts, but it's a major thoroughfare. I think of Thornydale because it now connects both to Ina and the freeway that way and the river road heading into town. It's just a significant amount of traffic, and it gets comments as a 2-lane road. Where it is a 2-lane road, it's just a problem. We attempted when I was working at the county to bring densities up as much as possible along it so that we could potentially get some transit, but we run into the problem of it being going smack through the Ironwood Forest area. So it becomes an issue of adding density in that area.
Go ahead, Carol.
Yes, for staff, on this list, it says Thornydale, Cortero to Camino del Norte, and on the project name, it says Thornydale, Cortero to Tangerine. So what is it?
Madam Chair, or Vice Chair, 2546 is going to be extended to Tangerine Road. So the request from the workshop was to extend to Tangerine Road, correct? Yeah.
Were they two different projects before, or?
It ended at Camino del Norte, so the request at the workshop was to extend it to Tangerine.
This is county.
Yep. Hockey, to expand on that, the original project was submitted from the county, stopped at the county jurisdiction. Then following, as Pocky said, the TMC workshop discussion and follow-up discussions with the jurisdictions, both Marana and the county agreed to extend it all the way up and connect to the improvements up at Tangerine.
But Marana had not submitted that in their initial rounds. Okay.
No, the county had championed that one from the in the beginning.
And the rankings and scores. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. We were looking at the traffic counts.
Okay. Well, I'll do ranking and scores first. The CAC score rank is 5, fifth project, and then the CAC priority rank 49. And this is Pima County's number 4 ranked project. Volumes, you can see the volumes here. This is sort of just, you can start near the southern part, looking at existing volumes ranging from 10 to 17, 18 down on the southern part, and then future volumes are on the right side. That's correct. So you see that there's some congestion showing down on this southern section. And then of course the volumes will be increasing the build out year.
See what it looks like up at Tangerine.
Tangerine, I can zoom in a little more.
No, it's not much. In the southern end, there's arguments.
Tell me what that says. I can't read it.
Oh, okay. For the segment that's closest to Tangerine, current volume is 8,000 and the future is 10. And then down on the southern end, seeing the most congestion here in this middle section between Overton and Freer, 18,000 currently, 21 in the future. So you'll see the colors. You got your yellow and your red. That's indicating some future congestion. Follow them.
And this is a 4-lane divided or 5-lane?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have a point of order. Do we really have quorum right now?
Yes.
Yes.
How are we figuring that?
Well, counting to 16 and making sure we have at least that.
How did we get 16?
19.
We have 8 in the room and 11 online.
No, I mean, how is 16 quorum?
Mr. Chair, Eva, there are now 30 CAC members on the roster, so 16.
There are 30 CAC members?
This was discussed at the last CAC meeting, yes. We announced 3 members that are no longer on the CAC, so.
Oh, okay. 30 CAC members. I see.
Yeah, I think
It was
she
sent,
must-
yeah, that information should have been sent to you, but anyway, Mr. Chair.
Let me ask, since this is just to Tangerine Roads, you don't have the segment show, you can't show the segment to
More.
Camino. No, it says Camino del Norte, or no, in this.
Oh, okay. So Camino del Norte is right here.
Right, doesn't go all the way to Tangerine.
Oh, I see. Got it. I was looking at it the other way. So it's south of there. So is this budget, has that changed?
Currently, this budget doesn't reflect that extension. We're kind of still in the midst of incorporating the updated costs from the TMC workshop. This happens to be, there may be 1 or 2 other projects in which the extent has been updated. We're riding 2 horses across the stream. So this is a bit of it shows the appropriate extent per the workshop, but that updated cost, as we haven't gotten all the updated costs, isn't reflected. Even though we have received FEMA counties, we want to show them to you all at once.
Thank
So this updating, this is their original cost for their original extent. But we're showing you the new extent. And the CAC priorities and the CAC scores are based on kind of those original projects. Yes.
Right.
Got Ava and then Abby.
Another one. Eva? Oh,
Sorry. That was a leftover from my question about our quorum.
All right, Abby and then Arlen.
What's going on with the pygmy owl? You mentioned it. I can't get past this right now. You have an update on this?
Fish and Wildlife Service is finalizing their recommendation for the pygmy owl to be put back on the list as a threatened species, which would basically, it would be treated as, endangered. Threatened is the next step down, but they would, I think they're still talking about doing a recovery plan and critical habitat, so it could very well affect this area again.
Yeah, a reminder of the last section that was built of Tangerine Road when it was listed up Thornydale, sorry. There was kind of a design theory tested when that project was built, in that trees were habitat trees, I guess, were constructed in the median and median raised up in order to allow the low-flying owls to go from canopy to canopy without hopefully being hit by windshields. So that was just for your curiosity, if you're ever curious about why that section of Thornydale is raised up above the concrete barriers. That was the theory that was tested.
In the circles that I run, that's commonly referred to as the Thanksgiving Day weekend massacre. That road widening of Thornydale.
What did Thanksgiving have to do with that?
That's what it was. Or was it Veterans Day? Oh,
The mob, yeah.
yeah. Anyway, it was good.
Anyway. We digress.
Yes, we do digress. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, do we have a motion on this?
I was gonna make one more comment.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I guess I look at this section as being like a missing link. It's, you got Old River all the way up through Thornydale until you get to McGee or Cortero, I guess. And then I think the county went in and added some bike lanes and small bike lanes, but there's no sidewalks. I'm not sure if there's complete drainage out there. And the bike lanes were a good addition, but they are like probably 4 or 5 foot bike lanes. So anyhow, I think looking at it, it was kind of finishing that corridor be a good thing. Whether or not it needs to be 4 lanes all the way to Tangerine looks like it could be a question. Might need maybe just go to the high school or up through I'm guessing Overton is where a lot of traffic takes off.
Really tough. Maybe a 3 lane in that section. All that would be decided, I suppose, Rick, during the design concept report. Or we have a situation like
First Avenue.
well, like First Avenue, yeah, or like Broadway.
Combination of, it could be something similar to what Silverbell was approved at, where it was recognized as a combination of a 4-3 lane that was identified by the CAC and the jurisdictions jointly in the RTA and submitted as such. So yeah, there's ways of dealing with that. That could be as part of the discussions with the TMC members and the jurisdictions as well, to see if more of a split or a hybrid combination would be more effective.
Yeah, and I don't know how much of the description, like Josh read on a previous project, would make its way to the ballot, but where it talks about if other congestion mitigation measures would be used at the time of design, it would be decided how wide to make it.
I think the county had included that provision along with almost all their submittals, that was a condition they recognized, that for some of these potential out year projects, recognizing that there can be dynamics in play 5, 10, 15 years down the line, they'll be incorporated in design and they may or may not change cross section. So it's being adaptable to what those demand situations would be at the time.
Which is one of the things that the CAC has talked about internally, at least since day one.
To add to what Kevin said, just for the scope of improvements, if I remember correctly, the section from Ina up to Cortero was an old bond project completed in the early 2000s. Marana widened the section between Orange Grove and Ina in the mid 2000s. And then the pavement overlay job, which basically went all the way up to Tangerine, that included some paved shoulders in there. That's been the scope of improvements that have been done in about the last 20 years.
Good, thank you. Arlen.
Yeah, thank you. This is another one of those projects where saying that I wanted it included, meaning everything, is difficult because I look at it as a part over time, and the southern part of this is where the issues from most people arose. The northern part less so. When you look at the numbers, I don't think the numbers justify a 4-lane road in the north part. But if we're treating this as we can't change what it is, then do I feel that some of Thornydale needs to be widened and improved for safety purposes as well as just in congestion? Yes. All of it? No. I don't know what to do with it based on that.
All right, does anyone go ahead?
Yeah, I would recommend we include this, but that we make it a 3-lane road, subject to approval of FEMA County. I know that the bicycle lanes are just almost non-existent, even with the overlay that the county did there. a foot wide, bicycle riders are taking their life in their hands. And the roadway is very busy at rush hour when people are going home. So I would recommend if we don't see the need for 4 lanes, at least consider a 3-lane alternative. There's another one of the issues there is with the 2-lane roadway, everybody has to stop while someone makes a turn. So
Yeah, I think though that the southern section does justify from a traffic count perspective, 4 lanes, but
Mr. Chair, if I can add in to Arlen's point, the current plan does have a couple projects that acknowledge split phase implementation. So Silver Bell being another example where it was period 2 and then period 4, recognizing there's a gap in time of when those improvements may be needed. So that precedence has been set on that. And the existing section of Thornydale from Cortero up through, I think Pecos Way is a 3-lane section. So it does have the 2-way left turn lane for the bulk of it.
Bruce.
Yeah, I would suggest to follow on conversation that we refer this, we put it on and refer it back to the TMC and ask for jurisdictional comment on the notion that the roadway may not be 4 lanes all the way up to Kansas Drive. That would give us clarification about what their thoughts are as well, because this was an additional extension that they proposed.
Okay, so let's try to see where we stand as a group on this one, presuming that Pima County's standard disclaimer, if you will, about the actual width being up to designers at the time, whenever it may occur. And as you guys have discussed, perhaps 3 or 4 lanes, some description like that. Given that, would you support that being added to the list? So does anyone want to move it in that way? Ron?
Make that motion.
All right. Does everyone understand that motion?
Can I just make sure that I'm clear on what the motion is?
Of course.
The motion is to tentatively keep it on the list, but submit suggestions to Pima County and to the TMC for possibly adding what sounds like a turn lane in parts or potential additional 2 travel lanes in parts, but not the whole way, and see what Pima County thinks.
Yes.
Okay,
Good description. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Abby seconds. All right.
Well, let me just make a comment, Mr. Chair. I just, the chairs were part of we attended the last TMC meeting, and regardless of the issues about 3 or 4 lanes and all that, the county did make kind of a real push for this particular project because it was number 4 on their sponsor rank, and they were really kind of hot on it. So I just wanted to make that comment that this is a really important project for the county. And I don't remember them talking about the new section versus the old section, but I believe they were talking about this whole piece.
Yeah, I think so too. And it did score very well among the CAC members that went through that exercise. Okay, let's we're going to do our hybrid roll call here. All right, in the room, those in favor of the motion, raise your hands. All right, I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, it's unanimous in the room. And could I ask for hands up for in favor of the motion for those on the call?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got Mary Bears, Door, need my glasses, Eva Romero, Michael Edmonds, Arlen Colton, Chris Schmaltz, Patricia Schwartz, Diane Shiplet, Joanne Saba, Jamie Cayley. Next page. Collie, sorry, Jamie.
Oh, yeah.
That's all I see. Let me, please speak up if I did not call your name.
All right, those opposing the motion, now everyone else lower your hands, and those opposing the motion, raise your hands.
We have Debbie Wainwright opposing. That's all I see.
Next page.
Do we have the other page? No, that's it.
That's it.
That's
Okay. Motion passes. The next
But
item.
before
to
we
the-
go on, I just want to make sure with the additions and the suggestions of TMC, and that will be brought to them on the workshop on Wednesday. Thank you.
Yes, Madam Vice Chair.
Bruce.
I just nodded.
Bruce.
I have to leave in 5 minutes. I don't want to jeopardize the quorum, but I just wanted to let you know in case that became a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Was Bruce leading?
Okay, let's move to the Anna Road projects. Can someone give me the history of these projects getting on the list?
So, these projects, they were not initially on the CAC list. They did show up at the TMC workshop. There was discussion about completing the Ina Road corridor. So some of the projects that are located to the east made that list, and these two did not. You can see that there are two separate projects. They're one full corridor. One of them is Pima County project. One is Town of Marana project. They're the I-10 to Camino de la Tierra Marana project was their number 4, the sponsor rank. And it was a CAC score rank of 5. With the CAC priority rank of 46. The adjacent piece, the CDO Wash to Paseo del Norte sponsor rank 17, CAC priority rank 67, and CAC score rank 82.
All right.
I can turn on the volumes and congestion if you'd like to see that as well. So you can see
So it seems to me there's a question that only Pima County really can answer, and that is with it showing so far down on their own priority list and not scoring well at all in either of our exercises. Is that a project they believe should go onto the list? And if so, perhaps provide us with some justification for that. Anybody want to make a case to put the Pima County project on at this time? Or are you satisfied to punt to the TMC and ask for a champion?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we refer this issue back to the TMC for comment.
Yep. I'll second that.
Okay, Bruce makes a motion and Dale seconds.
Question, as I was gone for a minute. The sponsor rank says 17, and that's out of 22, I think I heard.
67, not 17.
No, I mean from the
No,
sponsor
Pima
rank.
County
Oh,
ranks
Pima
that-
County.
So it's not very high with the counties rank, and it's definitely not high with ours. Just
Yeah, that's why I was asking, how did it get on here? And I think it was just because we talked about there not being an Ina Road project, and those were the two that had made their list at all.
Mr. Chair, this one was from the workshop one that was going to be combined with the next one. That's what. Yeah, so the two were going to be together.
so back when there was still 108.
Yes, they were going to be combined, 1535 and 473.
I would, I'd make a comment here. The only segment that's really showing a congestion potential, congestion issue is up towards Oracle Road. And my original thoughts were about Orange Grove, and I made a comment earlier about that. I wasn't gonna make an issue out of Orange Grove, but maybe what we're looking for is just this section, this 1 mile section of Orange Grove between,
Of I know you mean.
no, of Orange Grove. Because Ina is already developed as a 4-lane divided roadway. Orange Grove is a mishmash in that area. And it might help the overall congestion is to build a little section of Orange Grove. And that gives a project in that area and we move on.
For staff, was there a project that on Orange Grove Road where Dale is talking about that was proposed?
Yeah, whatever. Okay, so there's two pieces on Orange Grove.
They're both Pima County and one was their top ranked.
So the Orange Grove Road number 1, Lachoya to Oracle was the county's number 1 project. That would be
The Lachoya to Oracle is what I'm talking about. The other,
yes, right.
the other two are just not. I mean, there is a little piece between First Avenue and Oracle that shows some congestion, but you know.
So
I'm trying to minimize, put something on the map and make it minimal.
So could you repeat what your proposal is? You're talking about not having either of the Ina roads be added, but do have the Orange Grove
Exactly.
from Lachoya to Oracle Road on. Was that a motion?
That's a motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion on the floor.
We already have a motion on the floor.
Oh, yeah, I forgot.
That's.
and I'll just
Want to restate the motion?
Well, my motion was to take all these projects and refer them back to TMC and ask for jurisdictional comment. My understanding when we first took this, that we were talking in the context of looking at completion of full corridors out the road and Ida Road, and that's the reason it came back to the table for our consideration. That's a principle that I subscribe to, but at the same time, if this does not have high priority with the jurisdiction or doesn't have the focus of the TMC, I don't see any reason to move it forward. So I'm happy to withdraw my motion if it helps.
Kevin.
So I wanted to go back to, I'm sorry.
Dale.
Yeah, thank you, Dale. Wanted to go back to his comment. It started at Lachoya, at least that's what Pima County put in. Is that because that's their jurisdictional limits?
No, it started at Lachoya, and you can see that it's a little bit off of Lachoya, a little bit to the east because the
It's already been
intersection is
improved.
already constructed. So they started it there and then went all the way to Oracle Road with that project and also left the intersection at Lafayette out because as we those are already widened.
I guess where I'm going with that is it leaves the section out between Lachoya and Thornydale, which has not been approved either.
Actually, that section of roadway was widened for capacity and then evaluated for drainage, and we didn't have the all-weather crossing issues at the time. So that constitutes a 5-lane section from basically Lachoya west to roughly Camino de la Tierra and matches into the other section that's up there. So you do have continuous 5-lane capacity section.
But no sidewalks.
I believe you've got a multi-use path on one side.
Is there? Okay.
Yeah. And paved shoulders out there for bike facilities. But it did not do the full drainage. Like I said, we were not running into the all-weather crossings at the time.
All right, I'm fine with the Lachoya to Oracle.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to suggest we merge the two maybe comments and ask the TMC for advice on the Orange Grove versus the Ina and that issue. And, you know, my concern originally was we have a hole in the map and nothing in that area that that has proven in the past to be a major voting area. So I'm not looking to spend anything more than necessary to get those, give those people some reason to vote for it.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Yes, Joanne?
we're discussing a motion and the maker of the motion has withdrawn their motion. As I understand, so we need to hear from the second, whether or not the second's going to withdraw. And if the second will not withdraw, then we can resume discussion on the motion.
Yeah, I don't think he actually rescinded it. He just offered to do it if
Okay,
make things go better.
okay, I'm back on mute. I'll shut up.
No problem.
I think my motion was in the spirit of all deals. We've now heard 4 different concerns about this corridor. And it just seems wise to me to go back to TMC and the jurisdiction and get some clarification before we make a judgment about it.
Yeah, I think particularly in light of this section of Orange Grove being #1 priority for Pima County and not making our list at all. So I definitely agree with you.
Mr. Chair, could you read the motion again, please?
Say again, I heard someone speak.
Mary would like the motion.
Sorry, it's Mary. Could you read the motion again, please? Thank you.
I move that we take this segment of roadway, the Ina Road corridor, and all the issues that were raised around the table back to the TMC and the jurisdiction for clarification and for them to restate their priority regarding this particular project. And once we receive their comment, then we can decide whether or not this should be included amongst the list of additional projects.
One or both,
Sorry, both.
Both. Yeah.
both together.
Yeah, and part of that discussion will also bleed over to Orange Grove Road when we speak to the TMC.
But Mr. Chair, to clarify, Bruce, you're referring to number 1535 and 473 on your motion, right? Okay, so I'll make sure.
I guess I would ask Dale, I mean, I'm sorry, there are people that have been waiting,
Yeah.
Arlen and Chris.
Okay, yeah. Arlen?
Yeah, I was trying to, 2 points, on the Ina Road, there are 2 separate projects. I think staff was trying to get the congestion numbers up there, but they didn't appear, for whatever reason, I didn't see them. This is again, another project where I think we were trying to do something to combine 2, but they're different. The Ina Road part that's in Marana is a much more urban, dense set of development, and that made more sense to me. It also connects, again, makes a circle, if you will, I-10, Ina, Thornydale River, and then up and around. The other part didn't seem to score high on Pima counties. So from my standpoint, I was just going to say, consider adding project 1535 and not adding 473. It's not so much as a complete roadway. It's just that that's where I thought that the significant demand was in that area.
Let's get that. Why don't we get that confirmed by the TMC? I think you're probably right. We'll get that confirmed by them. And at our next meeting, we can provide that feedback and make the decision perhaps exactly the way that you're suggesting it here.
Mr. Chair, would you want to see us have a motion also on, well, I guess we need to, are we voting on this one first? On item?
Yeah.
Okay. I was wondering if you were talking about it coming up in the context, Orange Grove coming up in the context of this. So should we also have a motion and a vote on Orange Grove separately? Is that what you're suggesting or not?
No, I think we're just asking for feedback on Ina, which will include conversation about Orange Grove, perhaps as an alternative. So we'll be hearing it. And that was part of the discussion that we had here.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, so the last item before we lose quorum is complete the corridor and perhaps add the Drexel Road corridor. Or do you need to?
I still need to get a vote here.
Oh, you need to go to vote. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'd like for folks online to raise your hand if you oppose the motion that Bruce made. And same thing here in the room. If you oppose, please raise your hands.
Debbie?
We have Debbie Wainwright opposing online.
Okay, and no other recorded nays, so this one passes also. And our final one on this list is Drexel Road. Anybody want to talk about that? Dale?
I'll just step forward. It's a project that's that we have identified and we are building the entire length of. I think it's a $2.4 million extension. I think we ought to put it on there and consider it part of the package. And with that, I make a motion that we do that.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Ron here in the office and others fighting over it elsewhere.
We have Patricia and Arlen. We have. Oh, never mind.
Okay, yeah, so with Bruce and me gone, you guys don't have quorum.
Yeah.
I am.
Just to note that both Abby and Bruce had to leave, but we maintain our quorum. Let's see, so we have a motion and a second. Other comments? Did you say Patricia?
I did, but she's
Nothing,
Okay.
not anymore.
All right, those in favor or those opposed to this motion, both online and here in the room, if you're opposed to the motion of adding Drexel Road, please raise your hands.
There are no opposed online.
All right, no opposition. So that one will also go on our list. Okay, thanks everyone for getting us through that list. I think those are all.
Nope. Do we need to vote on Sonoran Corridor?
Yeah, we're now launching into the next group of projects which are possibly for removal. I know that in the discussion of some of these other projects, like the Marianne Cleveland Colossal Cave Quintet, we may very well eliminate some of those when we get to the point. Jeanette, at this point, are you able to say what the total cost of all these projects?
Yeah, so we're looking at 1.297357. That does not include Ina Road.
And how much is Ina Road?
I came up with 87 million, but
for the two of them.
For the two of them. I built a cheat sheet before I came.
So it would be roughly, well, 69,160 for the CDO wash to Paseo del Norte. And then for the Marana piece, I tend to Camino de la Tierra 18.
All right, so 87.
88-ish, yeah.
So that is 0.087 billion, right? Somebody help me.
No, I'm too tired. I'm not gonna tell you.
I think you're right.
Yes, that'd be 87 million. Okay.
87 million.
Okay, and so that's 1.37 billion at this point. I want to go through these real quickly and see if anyone wants to pull them out right now. But I think we have questions that will be answered, hopefully, or at least input we'll receive on Wednesday that'll inform us. And I'm not sure if it does us a lot of good to remove them now, but we should try to discuss them so that we can more quickly come to a conclusion about them when we get there. Dale?
I have on, we're talking about this list, right? Our approved list?
Yes.
Something pull out. Okay. And I have a question about a project and it's not, and I'm not advocating pulling it out at this point. I'm just, but I think it's a TMC question. And that is in the South Tucson project. They have put in a grade separation over the railroad at that location that they're talking about down there. And
What number, Bill?
and that's project number 1526. And if I remember right, we did not even the current RTA has a project on 22nd Street, Keno to I-10. And I don't even think that project includes a grade separation over the railroad. And that may be, do you have a comment?
It does. The scope that was originally envisioned did include a grade separation over that Nogales spur line. That's in the segment that the city has identified to be considered for delayed.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was intended or it was envisioned for it to be a grade separation.
Yep. I basically, I'd like the TMC to comment on the, I've driven that road. I can, I really think South Tucson deserves to see that road improved. Okay. But I'm not sure I buy the justification for the overpass. And I'd like to see what the TMC says about that.
There was also some comments I heard from TMC, although I can't recall exactly at this time, that they felt that may actually conflict with the BRT project, the bus rapid transit project that's on an adjacent roadway.
Yeah.
I don't know if I got that right exactly. Do you remember, Josh?
I wasn't involved in that conversation, but you may be thinking about the 4th Avenue trolley.
Oh, the trolley, you're right. You're right.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would really like to know what the, I kind of feel like we're putting overpasses are expensive. And I really wonder if the overpasses is necessary.
And Jeanette, the cost of this is
67.
67.
Okay.
Yeah.
7,550.
Yeah.
Got Kevin, I don't think Kevin.
So I don't have necessarily a comment on the viability of the project per se, but I think we need to be careful with the language. Where rather than saying overpass necessarily, we should just say grade separation, just in case an underpass or some other option is there and we don't get locked into something that may not be the best solution. So maybe just grade separation. But again, I don't have a comment one way or the other on the validity of the project.
Yep. I'm sorry.
Nobody's on.
Oh, go ahead, Ron.
Mr. Chairman, I was just wondering, are we going to have an opportunity to revisit some of the ones on our original list and make decisions whether or not we really want them on be on there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
I think that's important.
This entire master list is open. At our next meeting, that's what we'll be doing. We'll be removing or moving over to a reserve list enough projects to lose another $270 million worth of projects.
Yeah, Ron, as you recall, Pocky was trying to get us to do that today. To some extent, get rid of projects, but we have a lot of questions. This iterative process of TMC, we're trying to get them to clarify some things before we do that. And I think that's a good way to go.
And on that note, I will reopen the tabled motion regarding Sonoran Corridor and ask if we have any further comments about that before we look for a consensus.
Arlen's on the back on.
Go ahead, Arlen.
Arlen.
My comment is on the number 3660, the Ronstadt Transit High Capacity. So I'll be quiet on this one.
Okay. Keep that in mind. Okay. So Sonoran Corridor, this was 20 million. You can confirm for us that now the amount showing on our master list is 20 million, not
20 million.
969 or whatever it was. Okay, good. Right. Does anyone want to add anything to the conversation that you all had at the beginning of the meeting? All right, Pocky, do you recall, can you give us the motion? Was it simply to remove Sonoran Corridor from our master list?
I believe that was it. Yeah. So the motion was to remove the 20 million, number 3570 Sonoran Corridor funding for right-of-way acquisition from the initial list of 32.
Just as a comment from myself, since that conversation that we had, we've kind of gone a little bit of a different direction in trying to identify projects where we felt some more conversation with the TMC would be helpful to us. I don't know whether you consider this to be one of those. Personally, I do, but I think at this point, if I don't see any other comments.
There's a couple on here,
Okay.
Chris and Melvin.
All right, go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My last comment will be that given the process, I just think it's way premature to remove this regional project from the list. We need to consider it in the closer to complete mix in order to make decisions about where that money should best be allocated. So I'm opposed to removing it from the list. Thanks.
And Mel.
Mel.
I would agree with that. I think it's an important project for the community, for the region.
Okay, thank you.
I agree with them, except I'm not sure we're not going against the vote we took at the time. I'm confused about what the vote really settled on.
What vote is that?
The motion, you mean?
The motion that
It was, remember it was tabled, so we didn't vote. on it.
Okay, so we didn't vote, so.
But the motion was to remove it.
I don't know that it was. I thought the motion was to table it.
I thought the motion was to
discussion.
And that's what.
The motion to table was to table the motion to remove it from the list.
Right.
Yes. Okay.
Didn't I just say that?
Yeah,
I didn't use the word.
Sort of. Sort of.
So
All right.
basically, we didn't take any action.
Correct.
We should,
That's what
then
we're
I
doing.
think we should leave it there.
Yeah, well, the motion is on the floor right now, and if you want to do something other than remove it, like refer it for more information or keep it on the list, then you should vote against this motion. That makes sense to everyone?
Yes.
Would you repeat that?
Yeah, and I vote at this time removes it from our list. Period. With no well, not no recourse, because there's always tomorrow, right?
At least
but-
until June.
But as far as our conversations here and you know, throughout, so I'm asking anyone who wants to remove, wants to support the motion to remove Sonoran Corridor, please raise your hands, both online and in. All right.
Remove it. We're voting to remove it.
Voting to remove it. We have a vote to remove from Kevin in here
One from Debbie on here.
and one from Debbie online.
Online.
Okay. In that case, the motion fails and this remains on the list.
Mr. Chair,
Oh, I'm sorry. And there, I keep asking. I forget to ask. Are there any abstentions besides Carolyn?
Debbie, I think you forgot to lower your hand, right? Diane is abstaining.
Okay. All right, thanks. Does anyone want to do anything more about Sonoran Corridor at this time? All right, hearing.
I'm sorry, let me just clarify. So are we sending that forward and asking the TMC? Nothing. Okay.
Nothing. It's just on our list as of now.
Remains.
Yes, I would move. I don't know if we need to move, but I would like to get some more clarification on Sonoran Corridor as far as the funding and the timing and everything else. So, but I can bring that up to the TMC on Wednesday, I suppose. It seems in the spirit of some of the other projects we were
Okay.
talking about.
Yep, we don't need to vote on that. We'll just,
Okay.
we'll do it. All right, next we do have the Ronstadt Transit Center, and I think Arlen wanted to be heard on this.
Yeah.
Sorry, the Sixth Avenue, Ronstadt TIA.
Right. My comment on this is that, again, I have some experience working with the airport authority. It is not recent, but there have been long discussions about building a road, a highway to the airport, to building a transit corridor to the airport. And I really think if it hasn't happened already, you need or we need the input from the airport authority in some manner, because as memory serves me, the airport gets very little traffic through transit to the airport. It's all done through vans and taxis and Ubers and Lyfts and private cars, but not necessarily while a bus goes to the airport. Other than workers, there's at the airport, there's few people using it to get on an airplane. And that's because suitcases are heavy and there's no real way to do it, particularly if you're disabled or have difficulty lifting things. So I would like, before continuing this on the list, in addition to whatever other concerns there are, from a practical standpoint, I would like to say, get some input or have TMC get some input from TAA, the airport authority, as to the viability of this item. If they're fine with it, that's fine with me, but it's just.
Now we have South Tucson was objecting at least mildly to this project at the last time we spoke, or at least maybe it was Karen that mentioned that they didn't like it.
What I think she clarified, and I don't know if Karen's still on here, was that there have been public meetings in South Tucson and many of the residents. And gentrification, et cetera. I don't know that she said that the South Tucson City Council or whatever has done it, but that was where that came from.
And if I can add something, alternatively, if there is a need for it, I realize that you're doing this as some kind of corridor with street furniture and other things, but it could be something that could be considered not as an independent project, but by the transit committee as well, if there is demand that the airport finds for the service.
Okay, Chris, are you still on? Would you
Yes,
like
Mr. Chair. Yes,
in?
Mr. Chair, I'm on. Yep.
What do you know about this project with respect to position of the airport authority?
In the past, as to this specific project, we'd have to talk about it internally to sort of give official feedback. I know in the past there have been planning efforts associated with a transit center or a multimodal sort of delivery of people to the airport, which the airport absolutely is in favor of. As it relates to this project and sort of the plans associated with it, I can talk internally and we can absolutely provide official TAA feedback as it relates to Arlen's questions.
Okay,
Joanne
good.
is on too.
And I have Dale.
Yeah.
And then Kevin and Joanne.
Yeah, I think there's also, I'd like to see the official South Tucson and the city of Tucson's comments regarding this. And this is kind of an awkward project from the city of Tucson standpoint. This is the heaviest used transit corridor in the city, anywhere in the community, and has been for eons. And you know, we always used to think about it was Broadway South 6 combined route, but it's the South 6 part of the route that's always been carried the freight, so to speak. And so I would like to see what the city of Tucson has to say. And from the city of Tucson standpoint, it's awkward. They have to go, you know, if they keep it on South 6, they have to go through South Tucson. But the reality is that they're talking about a route that's on both sides of South Tucson. And so that's an awkward situation. And so I'd like to see both of their comments and how they feel about it, and go from there. And the city of Tucson might clarify a little bit exactly what they're talking about doing to create this busway. We know what a busway basically is. It's a dedicated lanes for those buses. But exactly how they're going to make that work within this roadway configuration is another question. And are they talking about adding additional width to be able to do that, or are they just taking out in center lanes?
Yeah, and how are they doing that for only 22 million?
Yeah.
They're not going to be adding lanes.
Yeah, that's my feeling.
Guarantee that. Yeah.
And so what's the impact of maybe losing the traffic lane?
Yeah, Jeanette, could you get us to the project description and see if it provides any further information? Just says high capacity transit.
Yes, and they didn't specify existing lanes to future lanes. They noted that it's an 8.73 mile project.
Yeah.
There weren't
Okay.
too many specifics.
All right. I think it's a good idea to do that. Kevin, did you have a comment?
My question, I was actually going to ask for this to be pulled up, because it doesn't specify the route and only just point A and point B. So does it have to go through South Tucson? I think Dale kind of explained probably why it does, but you know, could it be routed a different direction where it avoids that conflict? Which I didn't see anything in the description that said it had to do this. So, but yeah, I guess that would be a question for
Joanne.
Okay, Joanne.
Just wanted to know if anyone's keeping in mind that there is a large construction and renovation project going to be happening right down the road from the Ronstadt Center. Says someone who's on the Fox Theater board.
When is that supposed to happen? Perhaps this is be a project that could happen.
Well, now that you mention it, I think it would be nice if the RTA took a naming opportunity and contributed $4 million to the project.
I'm sorry, you seem to be muted right now.
We're in the process of fundraising for the down payment, but we have secured the financing. And we actually now own the stone building.
All right, sorry, but you're still muted.
No, in that I
Thank you for the free commercial. I think that.
Yes, but I think that construction will be happening next year, next spring.
Yeah.
So we may want to take a look and see what that project is going to do, and see if that's going to cause any or result in any expansions or a shift in the building structures, the footprint.
Okay, sounds good. We'll certainly include that question as we talk to the TMC. Carolyn?
Yes, another comment on this is it relates to a kind of a larger issue that Pocky has mentioned, that we are looking at named projects. This has a name and it has a number, but there was also a discussion that this goes to the transit committee to be discussed. And there were some other projects too. And I guess the first thing I would want to know is what is the definition of a named project? And then figure out what belongs in a transit, or not just transit, but categorical, and what belongs in a named project. And should some of the projects brought forth from a jurisdiction that have names, even if they're transit or pedestrian or sidewalk only, should those be in a named project and be funded by the 1 point whatever we end up funding? That's a question for the group, but first I wanted to know what is the definition of a named project?
Well, the best example I can give is if you look at the current RTA, out of 1,000 projects that have been completed to date, 35 are named. Those are the ones that are on the ballot. So they were specifically named that they will appear on the ballot in that manner. The other project, the categorical projects are a bucket where you can, that's more flexible and you can choose to.
Yeah, and in addition to that, I believe that the transit projects or the transit money was largely spent on operations, either extending, creating new routes, developing hours, weekend, that sort of thing, and continues to be one of the biggest funding sources for administration, if you will, of the transit system, as opposed to the streetcar project, which obviously was a named project.
It was in the transit, it was under the transit category though.
But it
wasn't a named corridor project.
Oh, but it was a named transit project.
Right.
Yeah.
It was the only one.
That one was unique. Yeah.
So I think there've been some questions I've heard recently about whether those transit or whether those buckets need to be just complete future programming, or if our CAC plan can offer to the voters that a specific project or 2 or 5, whatever, within that bucket will be part of what they approve, meaning the rest of whatever is in that bucket will be programmed in the way that PAG normally or RTA normally programs projects. Rick, you want to weigh in on that?
Is it lunchtime yet? I don't know that I could, as you were talking about that, as to, you're talking about basically putting in the categorical section, having line item definitions for those type of projects. Pocky, I've not heard a restriction on that. I think you're right. The precedence got set with the current plan that the streetcar was a named element under the transit. I'm sorry, it was a streetcar was a sub element named under the transit element.
Yeah.
So I think that precedence has been established, if that's a direction the CAC would like to go.
All right, thank you. So we've now lost our quorum and we'll be closing the meeting, but I want to let you know that this conversation about this project will be taken up with the TMC on Wednesday. And we'll report back to you at our next meeting. Because we have lost our quorum, I'm hereby declaring this meeting adjourned. Thank you all for spending this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ms. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you. Double thank you, Carolyn.